Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal, and you're watching the Mojo Story. Welcome to this special programming on the developments that are taking place in Pakistan. Remember that a vote of no confidence was happening in Pakistan today. A session has been called, but dramatic developments took place inside the assembly hall. It all started with the recitation of Quran, and then minister in Imran Khan's government, Fawad Hussain, stood up and he spoke. He said that the opposition has a right to bring the vote of no confidence, but but he also said that the vote of no confidence has been brought with a background. The background was that he said there is a foreign conspiracy to topple the Imran Khan government. Hence, he asked the speaker to reject the motion. And in a dramatic development, the speaker has rejected the motion. So the motion of no confidence to dislodge the Imran Khan government has been rejected by the Speaker of Pakistani National Assembly. So it's quite an anticlimax. Now the opposition has been garnering support and getting its members together for all these days. They had the support of the allies of Imran Khan as well, and it was clear that they had the numbers. But Imran Khan had said that he will spring a surprise just before the session takes place, and that surprise has come in a dramatic development. Imran Khan's minister stood up and he said that the no confidence motion must be rejected because there is a foreign hand involved, and he also said that the conscience of some of the members of PTI who had defected and joined the opposition ranks to topple the Imran Khan government and some of its allies has suddenly, their conscience has come to the fore. And he also raised that issue, and afterwards, very very briefly, he spoke. The speaker said that given that context, the vote of no confidence motion is rejected. So clearly, that's a big development that's taking place in Pakistan. Remember that this vote of no confidence motion was brought in last month, and then it was delayed. It was delayed for many, many days, of course, under the constitutional provisions. But now, today was the last date when the vote of no confidence was to be done in the National Assembly of Pakistan. Imran Khan himself was not in the house. There were leaders of the opposition, Shahbaz Sharif, there was Zardari, Bilawal Bhutto. So clearly a constitutional crisis that's hit Pakistan now after this vote of no confidence has been rejected. Now it's very important that it's actually been disallowed. That's the point. And Imran Khan is going to address his nation shortly. That's the message that we are getting from Pakistan. Earlier, Imran Khan had in fact asked his supporters and followers to come out on the roads and to demonstrate peacefully. Now we've been seeing those pictures of protesters on the roads in Peshawar, in other places. There were also reports that some women protesters were held up and they were detained by the police in Islamabad, which was kept really out of bounds. The red zone of Islamabad was kept out of bounds for the protesters, but they had assembled at other places. So clearly, this is the situation in Pakistan. The vote of no confidence has been disallowed by the speaker, and the reasoning is that, of course, that provision of the constitution has been invoked, and it's said that there was a foreign conspiracy, what the minister said, and that became the reason for disallowing the motion. So all the efforts of the opposition parties to cobble up the numbers to dislodge the Imran Khan government have for now been held up and stopped. And now it will be important to see that how is the opposition going to react to this development. What are they going to do? Of course, it's a crisis, political crisis that's hit Pakistan. Of course, the opposition parties had the powers given by the constitution to bring about a no confidence motion, but now this has happened. Imran Khan has been saying that he will give a surprise to the opposition parties just before the no confidence motion, and that surprise has now come. The vote of no confidence has been disallowed. So clearly a big development in Pakistan. Now remember, all this started on March 8th when the opposition parties, three prominent opposition parties of Pakistan, including the Muslim League Nawaz, led by Nawaz Sharif and Shehbaz Sharif, and People's Party, which is led by Zardari and Bilawal Bhutto, and another prominent politician of Pakistan, Maulana Fazlur Rahman. All of them came together and they really introduced this motion of no confidence. And then there were dramatic visuals that came out from the Sindh House in Islamabad, where some of the members of Imran Khan's party had defected, and they were clearly saying that they will side with the opposition parties and they will vote against Imran Khan. Now remember, Sindh is ruled by the Pakistani People's Party, and Sindh House in Islamabad is obviously under its control. Then the members of the PTI really barged into Sindh House. They broke the gates and they entered the Sindh House, and situation seemed to be escalating from there on. And Imran Khan later called in a series of public rallies in Pakistan, and in his last public rally, which he named on the basis of a verse of Quran, Amar bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, that is, stand with truth and justice and stand against evil. And in that rally, he waved a piece of paper, and he said that for the first time, he said that there was a foreign hand involved in the no confidence motion. He didn't name the country, obviously, at that point in time, but he said that there was a foreign hand involved to topple his government, and that foreign hand was working with local politicians and leaders of Pakistan. And then Imran Khan subsequently addressed the people, and he named America. And then it became clear that this was a cable sent from America on the 7th of March to Pakistan, where the vote of no confidence motion was introduced on the 8th of March. And ever since, Imran Khan has been saying that he will obviously be giving a surprise. So before we discuss it further, we would want to go to the Pakistani National Assembly and hear what the speaker has to say.
अदम एतमाद की तहरीक आइन, कानून और रूल्स के मुताबिक होना जरूरी है। किसी गैर मुल्की ताकत को यह हक नहीं कि वो साजिश के तहत पाकिस्तान के अवाम की मुंतखब हुकूमत को गिराए। वजीर कानून ने जो नुकात उठाए हैं वो दुरुस्त है, वैलिड है। लिहाजा मैं रूलिंग देता हूं कि अदम एतमाद की करारदाद आइन और कौमी मुख्तारी व आज़ादी से मुनाफी है और रूल्स और ज़ाब्ते के खिलाफ है। ये करारदाद में मुस्तरद डिसअलाउ करने की रूलिंग देता हूं। ईवान की कार्रवाई रोक की जाए।
Dramatic developments. I'm joined by senior journalist Umar Qureshi from Pakistan. Umar, dramatic developments in the National Assembly today. Had you expected that such a thing would happen?
The government had said, the Prime Minister had said that he was going to give a surprise to everyone. So this must be the surprise. It just happened a few minutes ago. So let's see what I think the next stage will. The opposition is going to appeal the ruling to the Supreme Court, and then let's see what happens. In the past, the Supreme Court has ruled that any ruling in Parliament can change a law. So let's see what the legal minds of both the opposition and the government will now be planning. As you could have seen though from the footage that the Treasury bench didn't have them, but they've been alleging all along. There's a conspiracy.
So Umar, hold on a bit. Imran Khan is speaking. Imran Khan is addressing the country, and let's hear what Imran Khan has to say.
अल्लाह इस कौम के ऊपर देख रहा है, 27 रमज़ान को ये पाकिस्तान वजूद में आया था। ये इस तरह की साजिश इंशाल्लाह ये कौम कामयाब नहीं होने देगी। तो जो स्पीकर ने आज जो अपनी अथॉरिटी, अपनी जो पावर, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पावर यूज़ करके जो फैसला किया है, अब इसके बाद मैंने अभी से प्रेसिडेंट साहब को वो भेज दिया है, एडवाइस भेज दी है कि असेंबलियां डिसॉल्व करें। एक डेमोक्रेटिक सोसाइटी में हम डेमोक्रेट्स अवाम के पास जाएं, अवाम से इलेक्शंस हो, अवाम फैसला करे कि वो किसको चाहती है। कोई बाहर से साजिश और इस तरह के लोग, करप्ट लोग, पैसे की बोरियों से लोगों को खरीद के इस मुल्क की तकदीर का फैसला ना करें। वो लोग जो सारे अचकन सलवा के बैठे हुए हैं और वो करोड़ों रुपया इन्होंने खर्च किया लोगों को खरीदने के लिए, ये सारा पैसा इंशाल्लाह जाया होगा। और जिन लोगों ने ये पैसा लिया है, मैं आप सबको कहता हूं कि कोई अभी भी कोई स्वाब कमा लें, कि कोई पनाह गाह पे लगा दे, कोई यतीम खाना खोल दें, कोई गरीबों के लिए मैं पैसा डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करें। और मैं अपनी कौम को आज कहता कि आप इलेक्शंस की तैयारी करें और आपने फैसला करना है। किसी बाहर की कुव्वत, किसी करप्ट लोगों ने फैसला नहीं करना कि इस मुल्क का मुस्तकबिल क्या होगा। आपने फैसला करना है इस मुल्क का। और इंशाल्लाह हम प्रेसिडेंट साहब को जब एडवाइस चला जाएगा, असेंबलीज डिसॉल्व हो जाएंगी और फिर आगे जो भी प्रोसीजर है अगले इलेक्शन का, केयर टेकर गवर्नमेंट का, वो अब शुरू हो जाएगा। मैं अपनी कौम को मुबारक देता हूँ और मैं अल्लाह का शुक्र अदा करता हूँ कि इतनी बड़ी साजिश जो मुल्क से की जा रही थी, एक इलेक्टेड 22 करोड़ की कौम जिसकी इलेक्टेड हुकूमत को गिराने की कोशिश की गई है, इस साजिश से वो आज फेल हो गई है। पाकिस्तान पाइंदाबाद।
वजीर आजम इमरान खान कौम से
Khan has now given an advice to the president of Pakistan for the dissolution of the assemblies. Now there will be fresh elections in Pakistan. So a day of dramatic developments in Pakistan. The vote on no confidence motion was to take place today, and when the session started, the Pakistani minister, Imran Khan's minister Fawad Chaudhry, stood up and said that he gave a constitutional reference, and he said that the motion must be disallowed because there is a foreign hand involved in all of this. And the speaker accepted that, and the motion was disallowed. And immediately Imran Khan has spoken, he has addressed to his nation, and he has said that after speaker took that decision, now he has advised the president to dissolve the assemblies and to go for fresh elections. Now this is a day of dramatic developments in Pakistan. Fresh elections will now be held in Pakistan. So obviously that is Fawad Chaudhry speaking. If we can use this bite and see what he's saying. Okay, I'm again joined by Umar. Umar, now Imran Khan has said that the assemblies will be dissolved, and now there will be fresh elections. What's the sense that you make of all of this?
Very dramatic developments, like you said. Yeah, he is sending an advice to the president of Pakistan to dissolve parliament and seek early elections, and he's saying that the voters will now decide that, it's all framed in the foreign conspiracy angle, which I think his supporters buy, but a lot of other people don't buy in Pakistan other than the supporters. So it remains to be seen what the outcome of such elections will be. Probably, I would assume, if they go ahead, if this isn't challenged in court, and if things do go and the assemblies are dissolved, then I would think that the opposition will basically be combined in on one side, as they are already, and I think their objective would be to make sure that the PTI doesn't get into government again. But as you said, it's things happening in the past half an hour. So let's see. There might be dramatic developments later in the day, for all we know.
Yeah, but what's the opposition going to do now? Because it's sort of an anticlimax. Suddenly, this motion is disallowed. They had done all the preparations. They had got their members. They had got the numbers. They were people who had defected from Imran Khan's party, then there were allies who were supporting them, and they clearly had the numbers. Perhaps more than 190, 172 is needed to show the majority. And now this motion has been disallowed. Was it expected, or the opposition has been taken aback, and what are they going to do now?
No, I'm not sure because, like you said, it happened very recently. But my take on it would be that early elections might not be that bad for the opposition either. They can, come back to parliament with more seats, and then Imran Khan would be. I mean, then he would have to then go. But I think the immediate thing would be that they would probably approach the Supreme Court to rule on the deputy speaker's ruling, and if that is reversed, and and then they might have and then because if the advice to the president by the prime minister can only be sent if he survives the vote of no confidence. The vote of no confidence never happened. So these are legal issues that the lawyers will have to get involved in.
But the point is, the end result is that there is going to be fresh elections in Pakistan. That seems to be clear now.
That it seems to be heading that way. I think the next few days will make that clearer. Yeah.
But Umar Saab, it was the Nawaz Sharif's party which was insisting on fresh elections because it helps them. But perhaps not so much the People's Party, because they have a government in Sindh.
Yeah. But they had also been insisting on elections in the sense that they wanted to get rid of him. And in Sindh, if they have an early election, the PPP will still win because they've been there winning for a long time. And in fact, they have a very commanding majority in Sindh of almost 70% of the seats in parliament. So I don't think they will see that as an issue. It's mostly logistical and, the expenses related to elections that will come into play.
But do you think that the narrative has now changed? The issues of inflation, price rise, which have been plaguing Pakistan for so many years since Imran Khan came to power, will now be taken over by this foreign conspiracy to topple Imran Khan government. While Imran Khan will be raising that issue, the opposition will be saying that that's not the case. But the real issue, the issue of inflation and price rise, will be at the back seat now.
I'm not sure about that. I think the PTI will definitely be raising the foreign conspiracy angle and narrative, but I think a lot of people, general public, don't buy that. So, and I mean, obviously they're affected more by the economy and the inflation prices and all that. I don't think that narrative is going to take control.
And what about the situation on the street? Imran Khan had given a call to his supporters to come out and to protest peacefully. Do you think some sort of a confrontation or clash happening on the streets now?
I don't know. I mean, he said that 1 million people would come out, and I think maybe a few dozen came, as we could see on the TV channels. So there wasn't much public response. There might be some response from the opposition parties now, but that remains to be seen. I think first they're probably going to try a legal avenue to go to the Supreme Court.
And what about this caretaker government? If the assemblies, he's advised the president to dissolve the assemblies, what happens here on? The caretaker government takes over?
Yes, I mean, if the assemblies are dissolved, then the federal government and the provinces get caretaker administrations whose main job is to prepare for the coming election within 90 days.
So that will happen if the president accepts that advice.
Yeah, and passes it on. That's another big if. But he's a close ally of the prime minister, so I'm assuming he will go by the advice.
So today is the first day of Ramzan. We're seeing those visuals. A lot of members of the assembly coming out, members of the opposition parties coming out. Obviously, they'll be speaking to the media, waiting there, journalists, and they will be giving their point of view. But we've got a clarity from the government. Fawad Hussain stood up and he spoke. The motion was disallowed, and then Imran Khan gave a very brief 2-minute speech to the people there, and he said that he has given an advice to the president for the dissolution of assemblies. Now, remember, in Pakistan, Umar will correct me, or assembly elections to the provinces and to the federation, to the parliament takes place simultaneously. Is it, Umar?
Yes, yes,
Like India, where it happens
yes,
at
yes.
different times, it happens simultaneously. So essentially, all the assemblies are being dissolved. Assemblies to the four provinces, or and the parliament. Everything gets dissolved if the prime minister sends the advice, right?
Yes, and if the president acts on it, yes.
Yes, and if the president acts on it. So obviously, this issues is clearly headed towards Supreme Court. The opposition parties will approach the Supreme Court, then the Supreme Court will deliberate on it. That will obviously take some more days. What do you sense in the interim happening, Umar, after this?
Well, I mean, Imran Khan is still the prime minister in the eyes of the constitution, unless
Hmm.
the court gives another ruling or something. But I would think that the opposition might engage in protest. But also, we have to remember that it's Ramzan now, so it's not easy for people to be protesting in the day. Uh, so we might see a muted response from till. I think they're going to wait and see what the Supreme Court says on this.
Yes, legally he is the prime minister, but there is a moral question also. He didn't have the numbers, the opposition had the numbers. He may be a prime minister legally, constitutionally, but morally, it doesn't seem correct.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, they didn't have the numbers. In fact, the interior minister was quoted as saying earlier today that if they lose a vote of confidence, the PM should go home and there's nothing to worry about. He was sitting there,
Yes,
but then the surprise came.
yes. And what happens to these allies and to these defectors now? Pakistan has introduced, coined a very uh, unusual term for these defectors, lotas, and there was a saying that this lotacracy. What happens to them now?
I think they're going to stick together to the combined opposition. Will probably stick together and see this out
Yeah,
because they could see that they did have the votes and it was a procedural move based on, in their eyes,
yeah.
the conspiracy is made up. So, and it's just an excuse for, in their eyes, it's an excuse for Imran Khan to extend his government, and it's true.
Exactly. And do you also see that whenever the elections taking place, that all these opposition parties, these allies and these defectors, they will come together and they will contest the elections all together, or they will do it
They have,
with respective parties?
they, they have, no, they will do it in their respective parties. I'm sure they will figure out these electoral adjustments, etc. But I think they're probably not even thinking that far right now. They're trying to, process what has happened today and then take
Yeah.
it from there.
Clearly, the surprise, the trump card that Imran Khan was saying all along, that he will show it before the no confidence voting. This was that surprise.
Yes, definitely.
But he had kept the cards close to his chest. Some thought that there would be something else. Some thought that it's just a bluff. Uh, but he did have a plan, it seemed.
Yes.
And yesterday also there were some photos circulating that there were members, some of his members sitting around Imran Khan, and they were giving some papers to him as if he was signing some resignations or something. That was also another theory that was making rounds, that
Option.
perhaps all of the members of Imran Khan will resign, and then that will bring another constitutional crisis. But that also didn't happen. It was a different situation altogether.
Yes, I mean, yeah, they've. I guess he played his trump card, and this is the rejection of the no confidence motion, followed by his advice to the president.
But do you think opposition made one mistake? They should have gone for no confidence motion against the speaker rather than the prime minister, because here the speaker is from the ruling party and he disallowed the motion. Had they gone for no confidence motion against the speaker, perhaps this would not have happened. They did it today morning,
Maybe,
but not earlier. Yeah.
perhaps, though, but I think the objective was to remove the prime minister from office. So maybe that's why they were more interested in the no confidence motion against him. And the speaker wasn't there today. It was a deputy speaker who was presiding.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
did
Yes.
file a motion against him, and maybe that's why he wasn't there presiding. But yeah, I think they were more interested in unseating the PM rather than the speaker. So that's why they went about it.
And what happens in Punjab now? There are dramatic developments taking place there also. Do you think that opposition will be in a position to uh, to form the government there?
They would. They both sides seem very confident. And let's see if the advice to dissolve the assemblies then goes through. Then there'll be no Punjab assembly either. So it's a lot of ifs and buts.
Yes. So essentially, the Muslim League Q, which had supported Imran Khan at the last minute, it seemed they were also going with the opposition, but then they sided with Imran Khan. That's also now yielded no results for them, because if all the assemblies get dissolved, uh, he won't be the chief minister, Chaudhry Parvez Elahi.
Yes, true.
So it's a interesting situation in Pakistan. Given the politics of Pakistan, given the security situation there, was it expected or completely unexpected? Umar, you've been a journalist and following political developments there. You know the situation through and through. Do you think it was expected or completely unexpected?
Hello. Yeah. I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I think it shouldn't have been that unexpected. I mean, the opposition should have done their homework on this as well, and this could have been one of the possibilities. But it is indeed a surprise for many people.
Absolutely, and surprise for journalists also who are covering this entire story. Umar, thanks so much. We will come back to you, but we're joined by Dr. Hussain Nadeem, who is a supporter of Imran Khan. Uh, I was talking to Umar Qureshi about the developments there. Nadeem Saab, do you think what is the sense that you make out of all of this that's happened today morning? Dramatic developments in the Pakistani National Assembly.
Thank you very much for having me over. And I joined a little bit late, so I'm not sure exactly what Umar said. And Umar is a very dear friend of mine. And it's not that I'm a PTI supporter or he's that. We're all Pakistani at the end of the day. To answer your question of what exactly has happened, I think the hints were already there for the last couple of weeks. The Prime Minister was talking about the Trump card. I mean, in simple words, he has outsmarted the opposition. For the last 20 years since he was doing politics, the same political leaders, the Bhuttos and the Sharifs, they kept on talking about Imran Khan as a cricketing hero but a political failure. So
Hmm.
that confirmation bias that they had, that this person, this prime minister, has no sense of politics, I think that kind of blindsided them in not recognizing that there is an Article 5, which might come under play over here. So in just real politics terms, he's outsmarted the opposition, which was very much ready and set to do the damage. So that essentially has what has happened right now. And I think in the past couple of weeks, what was going on with the whole idea on the foreign conspiracy and the threats of foreign allegations, I think that's been one very important element, because what we are seeing right now in India as well, with the US government openly threatening India to pick a side. That has been happening for the last 1 week with Pakistan, last 1 month or so with Pakistan as well. And I think in the presence of those real threats, a lot of people over here were asking this question for the past few weeks, that we don't understand why exactly is there a no confidence motion against the prime minister. So in the absence of any corruption allegation, I mean, remember one thing: there was no Panama scandal, there was no corruption scandal right now for the opposition to unite together to oust the prime minister. And in the presence of then these allegations on foreign conspiracies, the letter which has now been approved by the National Security Council of Pakistan, uh, the issue is rather simple, that the prime minister has prevailed, at least for now.
But the issue will linger on now. The opposition might go to the Supreme Court, and then there will be a legal battle. Constitutionally, Imran Khan continues to be the prime minister. But don't you think there is a moral question also? The opposition had the numbers, they had shown the numbers, they were present there. They had about 190 numbers according to media reports. Do you think morally it's right for Imran Khan to continue?
Now, that's a very, very good question. And I think that I absolutely agree with you on the morals part. But here is a problem. The the NCM was constitutional and there was no problem with that. But the way in the past few weeks, the public has seen on live television how the money was being spent and the parliamentarians were being bought. There was open horse trading. So the question of morals, I think, kind of collapsed a few weeks back when you had the opposition holding up the government side parliamentarians in the at the Sindh House, and there was open horse trading going on. So I think right now, when it comes to Pakistan politics, to look at the moral sense, I mean, the opposition is as immoral as this side. So I think the question of morality is not
But
here; it's politics
but
right
but
now.
but two wrongs never make a right.
Oh, absolutely does not make a right. And that is where my exact argument comes in, that you need to go through a flesh election, because the tit for tat and the whole cycle has to stop with a new mandate, which is going to be the election, I think. And that is where we're heading. Because if we linger it on to the Supreme Court and that can go on and forward, there's going to be no clear winner. And if the constitutional crisis grows, and we also understand very well how the pressure on the courts are in this country and the whole political, I think it is in of no interest to drag this on. The Regardless of whether the NCM would have passed or not, the elections were needed. The elections were going to happen, so I think this is probably a good time to undertake that. Although I think the opposition will not be very happy because it just faced a very big defeat.
And do you think what has happened today, has it made Imran Khan stronger or weaker?
You see, I think here is one very important thing I want to bring it to your audience. Uh, there is a selection bias when it comes to presenting the politics in Pakistan from India and from America. Selected voices are picked up to perhaps reinforce a particular narrative. About a month back, if you ask me, the prime minister was on his lowest approval rate. If the elections would have happened on its own trajectory, the PMLN would have probably swept. But what has happened in the last 1 month with all these JUIF, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, the People's Party, and PMLN all sitting together, coming together, it has not only recharged the Prime Minister's approval, whose whole agenda was and whose whole narrative was that these people are essentially part of the same corrupt mafia. So that one thing helped Prime Minister approve his ratings. And the second most important thing, what happened, is the American element in that. At a time when Pakistan is trying very hard to keep neutrality, and the Prime Minister, if you have noticed, he has twice, at the expense of his political mileage, has praised the Indian foreign policy. And now that is not just the fact that he's trying to somehow get any approval in India, that doesn't really help him. But he's really from his heart praising the Indian foreign policy establishment for standing up for its sovereignty. And that is what he's trying to do here in Pakistan as well. So the conversation now in Pakistan has become, if you talk to any shopkeeper, if you talk to any tailor, if you talk to any common man, it's not about the issue of inflation or if issue of governance, which already were there, by the way. It is now about one and one thing alone, which is that, are we going to be an independent sovereign country or not? And the
But
problem
but
really is with, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
but I was just wondering. Imran Khan had given a call to his supporters to come out and to protest peacefully. Uh, how do you see the situation on the street here on? Do you see some sort of confrontation or clashes taking place? Because obviously something has happened inside the house. There will be repercussions on the ground.
I think in the all these political parties, if you look at their history, they're rather mature political parties, and the violence and agitation doesn't really help any one of them right before, especially during this time. These are not TLPs. These are not the religious actors that are going to come out and start burning shops. So they all have political constituency in Islamabad, in elsewhere in Punjab, and also I don't foresee any violence. I don't see or foresee any specific escalation of events. Yes, there will be protests. Yes, there will be a little bit disturbances around. But I think more or less there is an appetite within all the political parties to go for elections. Uh, how that was going to happen was through a face saving for everyone. I think right now the prime minister might have to find a particular way for face saving of the opposition, because at this moment the opposition is has been outsmarted, and that does not go very well down with the voter, because the voter in Pakistan, especially in Punjab, will always side with the smarter party, or at least the party that has appeared to be smarter. And I think right now the PM has outsmarted 13 political parties.
Hold
That's
on to hold on to your thoughts. Bilawal Bhattu Zardari has just spoken. Let's hear him.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। जैसे पूरी दुनिया को पता है, पूरा पाकिस्तान को पता है, और आज खुद वजीर आजम, स्पीकर, बाकी सब ने देख लिया कि अपोजिशन का तादाद मुकम्मल था। हमारे पास अक्सरियत है कि हम वजीर आजम को अदम एतमाद में शिकस्त दिलवाएं। आज ये नजर आते हुए आखिरी मौके पे स्पीकर साहब ने गैर आईनी काम किया है। पाकिस्तान का आईन तोड़वाया गया है। पाकिस्तान के आईन को तोड़ने का सजा वाज़ेह है। अदम एतमाद का वोटिंग आज ही होना है आईन के मुताबिक। यूनाइटेड ऑपोजिशन ने यह फैसला किया है कि हम नेशनल असेंबली में धरना देंगे जब तक हमारा आईनी हक ना दिया जाए, और हम अपना लॉयर से इस वक्त आज ही अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट पहुंचेंगे कि हमारा पोलिंग, हमारा अदम एतमाद का वोट आज ही किया जाए। अदम एतमाद वजीर आजम साहब के खिलाफ जमा हो चुका है। वो पार्लियामान को डिसॉल्व भी नहीं कर सकता है। अदम एतमाद का मुकाबला करना पड़ेगा। स्पीकर साहब अगर ये सोच रहा है कि वो हाउस फरोग भी कर सकता है, हमने स्पीकर साहब के खिलाफ भी अदम एतमाद जमा करके ये ऑप्शन भी उनसे छीना है। वाहिद रास्ता जो आईनी और जमहूरी रास्ता है वो ये है कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने फैसला देना है कि हमारा आज ही अदम एतमाद का वोट होगा। ये बचकाना हरकत, ये मैदान से भागना इमरान खान ने अपने आप को एक्सपोज कर चुका है। मैं पाकिस्तान के अवाम से अपील करता हूं कि आप आईन के साथ थे, जमहूरियत के साथ थे, और हम किसी कठपुतली को, किसी गैर जमहूरी शख्स को आपके हक पे डाका मारने की इजाजत नहीं देंगे। खान साहब ये झूठा बैरून अक़वामी साजिश करा के वजीर आजम के इलेक्शन से भाग रहा है, अदम एतमाद से भाग रहा है। इंशाअल्लाह ताला।
So, as expected, the leader of the main opposition party, People's Party, has said that they will approach the Supreme Court and they will also sit on the dharna. The no confidence motion that was, also introduced against the speaker in the morning, and then there was this deputy speaker who actually dismissed or who disallowed the no confidence motion. So do you think it's expected, Dr. Hussain Nadeem, do you think it's expected move from the opposition that they will approach the Supreme Court and they'll sit on the dharna?
Of course, they have to do that. There is no other line of action for them. I think the Supreme Court option is the valid one. That's a right approach to take. The dharna they definitely need for the political purposes, but it's too early to say what will be the outcome out of it, because the Prime Minister has already dissolved the assemblies. The Supreme Court might take a notice on that and might ask it to be changed. But I do think that at the moment the public pulse is to go for the elections. Specifically the power quarters in Pakistan are not interested in prolonged, protracted chaos-like situation or a constitutional crisis. So there has to be a sooner or later, I think within this week, an agreement on the early elections. And I think which suits this government and also to the opposition political parties as well.
Well, the Prime Minister has advised the President the assemblies will only be dissolved if that advice is implemented by the President. So we may have to still wait for a while. I'd also like to go to get an Indian perspective. We've been talking to our Pakistani guest, Commodore Uday Bhaskar, joins me. Welcome to the show, sir. What is the sense that you make out of it? Quite a dramatic day in Pakistan. The no confidence motion that was talked about for all these days, and it had reached the point of climax, has now been disallowed by the speaker, and Imran Khan has advised the president to dissolve the assemblies. What's the sense that you make, and what are possible implications for India?
Well, first of all, I would say that the build-up to the no confidence motion in Pakistan is a matter, a subject that has been followed with a considerable amount of interest in India. You would have noted that all the audiovisual platforms, social media has been literally tracking this ball by ball. I'm taking the liberty of using a cricket turn of phrase because we were looking at some of the statements made by Prime Minister Imran Khan in the run up to the no confidence motion today. And on March 12th, he used a very interesting metaphor. He said that I will bowl an in swing Yorker and take out the opposition wickets. This was the warning, come threat, come caution that he had announced publicly. And when I was
he said एक गेंद से 3 wicket उड़ा दूंगा.
Yeah. Thank you for that translation. So it just struck me. I was also been looking at this morning, and most of us who are students of Pakistan's political trajectory for the last 25 years or so, ever since we had Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto and then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif in the equivalent of musical chairs, with the Pakistani army playing a fairly significant role, there was a sense of deja vu. So today, when I saw the saw the decision to reject this particular no confidence motion on procedural grounds by citing the Constitution, it seemed as if this was the Yorker that perhaps the Imran Khan team was planning. And I gather he has also advised the president that all the assemblies should be dissolved. So in many ways, I think we can see the kind of tussle between the elected leader in Mr. Imran Khan trying to gain the support of the street, his followers, and pitting it against the equivalent of the constitutional provisions. As also, one of you had spoken about the pulse of the Pakistani people, which is that perhaps to go for fresh elections. So I think this is a new development that we are seeing in the democratic experience of different countries, which is to try and seize the narrative, reach out to the people beyond the framework of the legislature, and make a case to say that even if there is a constitutional provision, it is the will of the people. Pakistan is not the first country where the will of the people has been cited. More recently, we had the United States of America when President Donald Trump was rejecting the equivalent of a constitutional procedure. And in that sense, I think we are seeing, perhaps it's too early to say because there's so much which is up in the air, literally. But from the Indian perspective, I would say that stability in Pakistan is a desirable status. But it is up to the people of Pakistan, the institutions of Pakistan, to see how best they deal with this current challenge. Over to you, sir.
Yes. Hussain Sahab, when Imran Khan came to power, and for a pretty long time, we heard this hybrid regime that army and the government are on the same page. But lately, we don't hear much about that. And while Imran Khan has been clearly talking about a foreign hand to topple his government, and also mentioning about America, we heard General Bajwa actually praising the Pakistani and American relationship and saying that there's a strategic relationship, and that's a deep relationship. Do you think some sort of a disconnect here between the army, the establishment, and the government that could play up more in the future?
Is that a question for me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. First, I just like to comment on the Commodore Saab and his opinions. Fascinating insights. I wish you would appear on Pakistani TV channels because this level of insight and understanding, because sometimes it's much easier for a third person to have a better clarity on politics than a lot of us who are very deeply involved in politics. So we get blinded through proximity. But thank you for those analysis. And I think the last part that you've talked about, which is that This is beyond what Constitution allows. This is beyond the uh, the NCM and the Prime Minister wanting to go to the public for his approval. I think that hits the spot, because that is exactly what is happening. Uh, I mean, to be fair, in Pakistan, the democracy is still very nascent, and there it's not an ideal democracy. Yes, we have elections, but the way those elections happen in a patronage political structures, where the Jagir, the Chaudhary, and the feudal lord is still running the show and coming into the parliament, and then there is horse trading going on. So we don't have the ideal democratic system, and it will take a few more elections to have that sorted out. Which is why, for the prime minister, then he had to bypass that entire uh, knots, the systematic knots that were there, to go to the public for approval. And what we have here right now in Pakistan is that PTI is the only national political party which has presence in Punjab, which has monopoly in KPK, which has presence in Balochistan and also in Sindh. So, if you look at the other political parties, they only have presence in the provinces. PMLN is only in Punjab, PPP is only in Sindh. So that part of PM going to the public is very important. Now, to the question on the civil military relations in Pakistan, there have been tons of books written, analysis after analysis, and a lot of analysis that I read in the Indian papers are somehow or the other not. Uh, it comes off with a very sort of confirmation bias in a particular lens they've chosen to see. I mean, it's easy to call the current prime minister selected, but to be fair, in Pakistan, no election has been without its problems. Uh,
Yeah.
there was a time when Benazir Bhutto used to call Nawaz Sharif selected. There was a time when there were other political parties that used to call Zulfikar Ali Bhutto selected, because he was also part of the Ayub Khan's cabinet. So if you look at Pakistan's trajectory of politics, it was always hybrid. There is nothing new about this thing. So for one party, PMLN, to now cry over Imran Khan being selected, it's not fair. And then for last 3 years, they ran this whole narrative of supreme civilian supremacy and vote ko izzat ho. And at the end of the day, what they're really asking is for, again, deals from the military establishment. So I don't want to touch on that subject of hybridity, because that's unfortunate the reality where we are in Pakistan. Now, coming to the specific relations between the security establishment and the prime minister, I do think for the past 3 years, the security establishment and prime minister had excellent relations in terms of key strategic foreign policies. You talk about Afghanistan, you talk about India, you talk about China, you talk about Russia. Remember one thing: the prime minister did not act on his own. When it comes to the security and foreign policy, the security establishment was fully on board with the prime minister on whole neutrality part and all of that. What changed? What changed is essentially the situation, the global dynamics of how things are working out. Uh, it's very open now that the US government has essentially threatened the Pakistani government that they will not be having good relations with Pakistan under the current prime minister, because somehow he is going banking too much closer to the Russia and China and moving away from Pakistan's Western bank policy. And I think the prime minister has very openly said this thing, that we are not the slaves of the West. And now, by saying that, he does not mean that he's anti-West. It's just that he expects himself and the Pakistan to have an independent foreign policy like that of India, which is why he's constantly quoting this
But
very fact that when we
yeah,
make neutral policy, there are 20 UN EU ambassadors that write letters to us. But when India does the same thing, there
hmm,
is no reaction to that. So that disparity, I
yeah,
think, is where he's fighting for. And now this current fiasco, what's going on in politics in Pakistan, is actually really all about, for the people, whether
yeah,
Pakistan will be a sovereign country or not, or whether we'll
yeah.
still be with policies from
We'll
abroad.
we'll ask that to Commodore. But I wanted to ask just one question here. That Imran Khan has been lately also saying that nobody should be neutral. Only an animals are neutral, and he's saying that essentially indirectly, perhaps hinting at the establishment that which has been insisting that they are neutral in all of this. So that also gives us some indication about the way the things are taking place in Pakistan right now. This entire theme of this public gathering, Amar bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, stand with what is right and stand against the evil. So that's why I was saying that we've been seeing this statement of General Bajwa yesterday, and before that, Imran Khan really saying that what's there to be neutral, either you stand for good or you are against the evil. That's in that context I was asking that how do you see this relationship developing here on?
You see, what the General Bajwa really said, and by the way, I hosted that, I was part of the committee that hosted the event, Islamabad Security
Yeah.
Dialogue, yesterday.
Yeah.
So it was not new. None of what he said is actually different from what the Prime Minister took the line. The day before, the Prime Minister gave a speech in Urdu, which was exactly the same, except that it was not as uh, pitched in a similar way. What the Prime Minister basically said was the fact that we will not be part of any camp politics, and I will not be dictated on who to condemn and who not to be condemned. And he told this thing that I understand what is going on in Ukraine, and we are for the peaceful solution and all of that. But what General Bajwa did was that, in a very categorical, clear term, in a statement, he essentially said that this is a human travesty that is going on, and Pakistan would like to stop that from happening, and etc. etc. Where he openly basically sided with the Western idea on the Ukraine fighting very bravely, which makes sense. I mean, you look at the situation right now. So if you ask me, there isn't much disparity in the policy. It is the disparity is in the articulation of that, where the Prime Minister has a particular political angle and he's looking it from an angle of independent foreign policy, and the Chief of Army Staff is looking it from an angle of essentially standing with the international partners on categorically on the issue of Ukraine. So the issue, I think it's being framed and pitched as somehow there is a discrepancy, but in real terms, what happened in the question and answer, which were off air, by the way, and I wish I could share them, but it was under the Chatham House rules. The Chief of Army Staff made it very clear that there was no disparity, and if anything I can share is that he really appreciated the Prime Minister for his policy stances. So there is no problem in that. The real problem comes from somewhere else, where the domestic politics continue. The both sides continue to drag in the security establishment to support either of the sides, and that is where the real problem lies.
Commander Uday Bhaskar, Imran Khan has been praising Indian foreign policy lately. He has been talking about the Indian passport, how it's being respected in the world compared to Pakistani passport. He said that India is a member of the Quad, but it's still importing oil from Russia. He praised it many times, Indian foreign policy. What's the sense that you make, from an Indian point of view? If you can unmute.
Am I
Yeah.
mute?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. I would just make the following observation. Looking at the sequence of events in Pakistan over the last few weeks, literally from mid-March to where we are now, I would say that Prime Minister Imran Khan has been a fairly deft communicator. And I make this point in relation to a larger, what I would call as recent political trend, that many elected leaders have understood the power of communication. In the old days, we used to call this strategic communication. And it was the purview of few professionals within the system who advised and shaped, what would be the articulation or the direction of the government. But because of technology and the speed with which now information is being shared real time, every citizen has become a journalist, and every citizen is also an editor, because they have very strong editorial positions on everything, from cricket to World Cup to politics to gender related issues, religion, you name it. The citizen is both a reporter and an editor. It's dangerous when they become activists. Now that is where we are. And I think Prime Minister Imran Khan's reference to India at a time when we are aware that there is an India card that has been played in the past in the politics of Pakistan. And this is something I would say that the students of Pakistan's internal dynamic do follow here in India. So yes, it was noted that Prime Minister Imran Khan has been very positive. in his reference to the Indian foreign policy. And it is also true that since Prime Minister Modi has assumed office, and this is his second term, there has been a certain focus and visibility accorded to the kind of positions that India has taken. The Indian Foreign Ministry has used certain phrases. There is something called the leading power, relevant power, and India being able to bring something to the table, both in terms of security issues and development. Prime Minister Modi himself has focused and used a term called Sagar, which in Sanskrit and Hindi is the ocean, but it also translates as security and growth for all in the region. So there is, again, what I would call as an outreach by the political leader, whether it's in India, whether it's in Pakistan, whether it is in Europe, and so on. So I think in this case, by drawing attention to the Indian position and how India has been perceived by the global community, I think he's in a way introducing this particular, I would say, card into the domestic context of Pakistani politics, knowing fully well that in the past, any kind of positive endorsement for India has been seen as an act which borders on treason. It is seen as anti-national and something that the hardliners in Pakistan have not in a way accepted, or they really go for the jugular of the political opponent. And I recall, as I said, I have been a student of Pakistan's internal politics since the days of Benazir Bhutto, which is really going back to the Cold War, where again I think some of the observations made by Dr. Nadeem are very relevant. But to suggest that the army is not a player in the counterfactual. And whenever a prime minister has tried, I think, to assert, I hope I'm not going into areas that you don't want to discuss, but my reading is that whenever a Pakistani prime minister, an elected prime minister, has tried to assert the equivalent of the civilian, quote unquote, supremacy in terms of civil military, it has had a very bad ending. So coming back to, I think this reference to India, Prime Minister Imran Khan, I think, is using a fairly wide quiver that he has currently with him in trying to establish and, in a way, I would say, prove his credibility, saying that I'm thinking out of the box. And, repeatedly, whenever he's had a chance in reference to India, he has made both what I would call as the constructive suggestion, but there are occasions when he also takes two steps backward. So I think this is part of the kind of political, I would say, positioning that Prime Minister Imran Khan is currently engaged in. Over to you, sir.
I'd like to...
Yes, Dr. Sam. Yeah.
Again, pleasure listening to Commodore Odeh Saab. I think he is very, very insightful. It's very good to hear him over here. Just to add on to this whole point about Prime Minister talking about India, why he's doing that, specifically given the political situation can be very, very problematic in terms of that. You see, if you look at the Prime Minister's history of discourses and narratives, he comes from a very post-colonial and decolonial angle. That is the angle he takes. And when you're taking that angle, a post-colonial angle, to talk about the sovereignty, the independence, and the ability to exert your wishes, the way you want to govern and all of that without any foreign interference, talking about India then makes a lot of sense. Because through a post-colonial angle, he's really taking a regional approach. He's not focusing on Pakistan alone. He's focusing on India as well. And I think that is where the real, the gist of this conversation is, that he understands the foreign policy issues related to the region, not as only the issues related to Pakistan, but also those issues that India is also struggling with. I mean, the place where India is right now, Pakistan has been in that place for the last 70 years. We were the most allied of the allies of the United States. And there is a saying that goes on: it's bad to be the enemies of the United States, it's worse to be its friends. And Pakistan has faced that for the last 70 years. And what he sees right now, I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but for somebody, an analyst like me sitting in Pakistan, look across the border in India, and the impossible position that the Western powers are trying to bring India to somehow take their line, take their narrative, and all of that, we can empathize. And I say this very openly. We can empathize, and we feel that India has done a remarkable job to draw a very red line on where it will and it will not allow to cross them. And I think that
We-
is where the Prime Minister is coming from as well, that he's
So
taking a
we
regional.
absolutely, we seem to be digressing a bit, but coming back to the main point now, you can also give us some thoughts about the U.S.-Pakistan relation here on, because that has been a key element to all this build-up of the no confidence motion. Imran Khan really saying that there is a foreign hand and naming America. How do you see the relation between Pakistan and America from this point onwards?
Thank you. My book on US-Pakistan relations is due in May. So I've written extensively on the US-Pakistan relations in the context of the Kerry-Lugar-Berman bill, the aid, and the politics around it. To be very fair, and I'm saying this as an analyst, not somebody who's in the policy community in Pakistan, the US-Pakistan relations in the past 70 years has essentially been security relations. It was Pentagon with the Pakistan Army. This is essentially the scope of the relations. We've fought their wars everywhere around the world. We were part of the Baghdad, Cento, Sieto. We were part of the first Afghan war, the second Afghan war, the World War on Terror. You name it, we've done that. So the US-Pakistan relations are essentially security-based relations.
Yeah.
The moment the security dynamics of the global world start changing, the situation in the country start changing. Those relationships start.
As precisely asking about the no confidence motion and the introduction of America in all of this.
So the Prime Minister has gone out, named the United States, which is unprecedented. But at the same time, the United States and the people we talk to over there also understand this fact that in politics in Pakistan, anything goes around. The relationships are very deep in terms of the security relations, so they will not remain much affected. The civil to civil relations were absent. They weren't there to begin with, so that wouldn't get affected. In the last couple of years, the US foreign aid to Pakistan is next to nil. I think around about $120 million. The standard aid for narcotics and all of that, anti-narcotics. So there isn't much there for the relations to be impacted at the moment. Yes, they are the largest export market. They are very close to Pakistan in many different ways. But I'm not expecting that the US will get too worried about this domestic political situation and the Prime Minister trying to save himself and the whole American narrative coming in. I don't think it will have any long-term impact. The short-term impact is already there. I mean, there is absolutely no relations between top leadership in the both countries. So, I mean, I don't foresee it as a problem.
So we come to the end of our show, but before wrapping up, I would like to quickly recap what happened today. It's a day of dramatic developments in Pakistan. Voting on vote of no confidence motion. There was voting that was supposed to take place, but the speaker disallowed that motion. Imran Khan gave a speech to his country, and he said that he has advised the president to dissolve the assemblies, and the opposition has now gone to the Supreme Court and they have sat on a dharna at the assembly. So clearly, the build-up to the no confidence motion, the narrative that was built around it, has come to the point of disallowing of the no confidence motion, and the politics of Pakistan here on is perhaps headed towards elections that were supposed to take place a year and a half later, but now they might happen very soon. We end our show here, but before ending, we'd like to play out Imran Khan's address, short address after the no confidence motion was disallowed. Thanks so much for watching.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम इय्याका नअबुदु व इय्याका नस्तईन। मैं आज अपनी सारी कौम को मुबारक देना चाहता हूँ कि नेशनल असेंबली के हमारे स्पीकर ने मुस्तरद किया, रिजेक्ट किया एक वो मूव, रिजीम चेंज की जो कोशिश की गई थी पाकिस्तान के 22 करोड़ अवाम में, एक बाहर से प्लान किया हुआ नो कॉन्फिडेंस मोशन जिसके पीछे एक फॉरेन एजेंडा था, اور جو آج اسپیکر نے اس کو جو ریجیکٹ کیا ہے اور یہ نو کانفیڈنس کو جو ریجیکٹ کیا، میں ساری قوم کو آج مبارک دیتا ہوں. مجھے کل سے اتنے لوگ پیغام دے رہے تھے کہ جی پریشان تھے کہ یہ کیا ہو رہا ہے. ساری قوم کے سامنے یہ ایک غداری ہو رہی تھی، غدار بیٹھے ہوئے تھے اور سازش ہو رہی تھی. اور میں ان کو پیغام دینا چاہتا ہوں، گھبرانا نہیں. اللہ اس قوم کے اوپر دیکھ رہا ہے. 27 رمضان کو یہ پاکستان وجود میں آیا تھا. یہ اس طرح کی سازش انشاءاللہ یہ قوم کامیاب نہیں ہونے دے گی. تو جو اسپیکر نے آج جو اپنی اتھارٹی، اپنی جو پاور، کانسٹیٹیوشنل پاور یوز کر کے جو فیصلہ کیا ہے، اب اس کے بعد میں نے ابھی سے پریزیڈنٹ صاحب کو وہ بھیج دیا ہے، ایڈوائز بھیج دی ہے کہ اسمبلیاں ڈیزالو کریں. ایک ڈیموکریٹک سوسائٹی میں ہم ڈیموکریٹس عوام کے پاس جائیں، عوام سے الیکشنز ہوں، عوام فیصلہ کرے کہ وہ کس کو چاہتی ہے. کوئی باہر سے سازش اور اس طرح کے لوگ، کرپٹ لوگ، پیسے کی بوریوں سے لوگوں کو خرید کے اس ملک کی تقدیر کا فیصلہ نہ کریں. وہ لوگ جو سارے اچکن سلوا کے بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں اور وہ کروڑوں روپیہ انہوں نے خرچ کیا لوگوں کو خریدنے کے لیے، یہ سارا پیسہ انشاءاللہ ضائع ہوگا. اور جن لوگوں نے یہ پیسہ لیا ہے، میں آپ سب کو کہتا ہوں کہ کوئی ابھی بھی کوئی ثواب کما لیں، کہ کوئی پناہ گاہ پہ لگا دیں، کوئی یتیم خانہ کھول دیں، کوئی غریبوں کے لیے میں پیسہ ڈسٹریبیوٹ کریں. اور میں اپنی قوم کو آج کہتا ہوں کہ آپ الیکشنز کی تیاری کریں اور آپ نے فیصلہ کرنا ہے. کسی باہر کی قوت، کسی کرپٹ لوگوں نے فیصلہ نہیں کرنا کہ اس ملک کا مستقبل کیا ہوگا. آپ نے فیصلہ کرنا ہے اس ملک کا. اور انشاءاللہ ہم پریزیڈنٹ صاحب کو جب ایڈوائس چلا جائے گا، اسمبلیز ڈیزالو ہو جائیں گی اور پھر آگے جو بھی پروسیجر ہے اگلے الیکشن کا، کیئر ٹیکر گورنمنٹ کا، وہ اب شروع ہو جائے گا. میں اپنی قوم کو مبارک دیتا ہوں اور میں اللہ کا شکر ادا کرتا ہوں کہ اتنی بڑی سازش جو ملک سے کی جا رہی تھی، ایک الیکٹڈ 22 کروڑ کی قوم جس کی الیکٹڈ حکومت کو گرانے کی کوشش کی گئی ہے، اس سازش سے وہ آج فیل ہو گئی ہے. پاکستان پائندہ باد.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.